So we've looked at the different claims to the throne and what the four different people might have said about why they should be the king next. Now, an exam question is what we're going to focus this lesson on. And that exam question is, why was there a succession crisis in 1066? Now, you already know one of those key reasons, and it's quite an obvious one, and that's what was that Edward died without a son. However, a point I want to get across to you straight away is that's not the be-all and end-all. Even if he had a son, that son might have been very young, and so that son might not have automatically gained the throne. So there are a number of other reasons, and if you think, even if Edward didn't have a son, which he obviously didn't, there were ways to stop there being a succession crisis happening at all. So, the 7 different reasons that we're going to look at today. Now, in an exam, you don't need to write about all 7 things, and you probably won't have time, but you need to understand those 7 things so you can pick out the main reasons for yourself. So we've got that England was incredibly wealthy for a medieval country. It's really a good climate for growing things is our country. There's plenty of natural resources. It was an affluent place to live in that period because of the climate more than anything else. So a king could become very, very wealthy from controlling England. That's why the Vikings kept coming. There's also Harold Godwinson. Now you're going to see a little bit of this acted out in the lesson, but the way that he managed to get the throne and the way he acted, he rushed to get the crown on his head. He rushed to be coronated, and that sends a message that this guy, he's acting quickly because maybe he realises that he's not got the watertight claim to the throne that other claimants might have. He's acting so fast, maybe because he's worried, and the fact that he's acting so fast undermines his succession a little bit. You've got the actions, the motives of William of Normandy. So you know about his claim to the throne, we've done about it. And for example, he has the Pope behind him, God's representative on earth. You've got English customs about the succession. So how was it decided before? That's what that one means. Well, usually it was the son of the previous king, not always, but usually. Failing that, well, and in addition to that, it was the choice of the witan. That was often quite important, but it wasn't. It was also sometimes the strongest warrior who happened to come out on top in the end. And actually, the whole thing and the main thing about English customs about the succession is there were no key rules. If there had been rules like son, no, there ain't one, right, what's next? Chosen by witan, next. There was none of this. It was not set in stone. There were no rules. It wasn't quite clear who legally should have been the king. So if there'd been some clear rules, maybe that would have prevented a succession crisis. The obvious one, the 5th one you're going to look at today, is that Edward died without a strong blood heir. Not only did he not have a son, he didn't have brothers. He didn't even have nephews. So that's a bit of a problem. And the only blood ties he had to him were very, very distant, half brothers and so on and so forth. Through his half brothers, so Edgar the Atheling, and through his mother as well. You've also got the claim of Harold Hardrada. So these 3 different people who have this claim, and finally, and this is often overlooked, that Edward himself could have prevented there being a succession crisis by saying quite clearly throughout his reign, this person is who I choose. But he didn't do that. He may well have promised William the throne in 1051 when he fell out with the Godwin family, and on his deathbed we can be fairly sure that he chose Harold Godwinson. But we also know that he sent the Bishop of Winchester to go and find his closest relatives, and they went all the way to Hungary for that. So that suggests at one point he thought, well, I'd better have somebody from my family in charge after me. So if he just made it clear, then it might have stopped there being a succession crisis. But he didn't. He seemed to not be able to make up his mind. And an A-star word we're going to use today is capricious. So Edward was capricious. You'll see how to spell it in the lesson. You can search it on Google if you want to have a look before then. But it basically means he seemed to not be able to make up his mind. He changed a little bit. He wavered between things. So there we go. The wealth of England, Harold Godwinson and the nature of how he became king undermined his reign, if you like. William's motives and ambition, the English customs about the succession, which were really unclear, Edward dying without a strong blood heir, the motives and claim of Harold Hardrada, and the fact that Edward wasn't clear. He was capricious in how he approached this. These are all the key things that you're going to look at today and decide which was the most important for explaining why there was a succession crisis at all.